Before we get to our normal podcast recording, I want to make sure that I read a statement in support of what is happening in the recent events by my fellow women of color podcasters. Here at the Wine and Chisme podcast, we are united to condemn the tragic murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the many, many others at the hands of police. This is a continuation of the systematic racism pervasive in our country since its inception, and we are committed to standing against racism in all its forms. We believe that to be silent is to be complicit. We believe that Black Lives Matter. We believe that Black lives are more important than property. We believe that we have a responsibility to use our platforms to speak out against this injustice whenever and wherever we are to witness it. In creating digital media, we have built audiences that return week after week to hear our voices, and we will use our voices to speak against anti-Blackness and police brutality, and we encourage our audience to be educated, engaged, and to take action. Please make sure to review the show notes for links to the various places that you can take action, and I will mention some of those at the end of the podcast as well. Hola mi gente, welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast, a podcast created to amplify voices and share the stories of people from marginalized and communities of color doing remarkable things, all while sipping on a glass of wine. I'm your host, Jessica Yanez. In today's episode, I speak with my friend Astrid Martinez. Astrid is a 3-time Emmy-winning journalist at CBS 46 in Atlanta and hosts her own segment, Astrid in the ATL, which focuses on culture and the booming movie and music industry in the city. Astrid moved to Atlanta after spending time as a reporter in Dallas, Texas, Charlotte, North Carolina, where her work there tackled topics ranging from immigration, drug cartels, violence along the border, and human trafficking. Growing up in Colombia, Astrid saw firsthand the civil and political unrest that plagued her country. It was the type of upheaval and the people's lives it affected that first ignited her passion for storytelling and her career in journalism. With that, she has established herself as a reliable reporter in the Atlanta area who supports communities of color, and has most recently been reporting from the ground where many of the Black Lives Matter protests are happening in the area. Last September, Astrid was named one of the 50 most influential Latinos in Georgia by the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and won a Rice Award for Outstanding in Media. So grab your glass of wine and join us for the Chisme. Hola Astrid, I'm so happy to have you finally.
I am so happy to be here. I'm so proud of you for putting this dream out into the universe and manifesting it. I know you love to talk, but now the world can hear it too. And we're so much better off for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This whole thing has just really been awesome because I am so curious about so many things and so many people, and I know so many people that have really awesome stories. So you were one of the names that I had down from the beginning that I wanted to talk to, even though I've known you for a few years.
Oh, no, thank you, girl.
And because I know that, I was like, heck yeah, I want to talk to Astrid. She has a lot of stuff, and it's just, we had, obviously, I was in Atlanta recently, so we had the opportunity to see each other a little bit, which was so great. I love being able to actually see you. This literally happened a week before we went on lockdown.
Yeah. I am so glad we got the opportunity to do that too before the craziness even started.
I know. So, well, before we get to the chisme, we always got to get to the wine before the chisme. So today I'm drinking a Sterling Vintner's Collection Cabernet Sauvignon. So
okay, down to the details.
yes, girl, it's a 2017. And
I am drinking a red Pinot Noir Meiomi. It's my go-to. It's affordable, but it has a great taste. And the only supermarket that was open that had it.
I think I got this when I went to the liquor store down the street. And I think it was like...
They're still open? It's essential business?
Yeah. Well, it's a liquor store and it has like, it's like a liquor store / small market.
Oh, I'm not judging. The liquor store, which is just a liquor store down the block from me, is open. I'm like, okay.
Yes, it is essential right now. So I think this one was like $9.99 or something that I got from there. So salud, girl.
Salud, my dear. This one is, I think it's like
That's good.
16, 17 bucks.
Yeah, I'm not a person who spends a ton of money on wine. So, but this one that is pretty good. It says this one reads on the back, this is a Sterling Vintner's collection built by the hand touch of our winemakers.
I like hand touches.
To create a wine of balance and elegance. Sip our Cabernet Sauvignon and savor the lush blackberry, cherry, and blackcurrant aromas, underlined with notes of vanilla and spice. I realized that I started reading the backs of the wines because I want to know what flavors, because I don't like there's certain, like, I don't like chocolate. I don't like grapefruit. So
I don't like grapefruit.
Caramel. So anything that
you're going to become a sommelier. Is that sommelier? Is that how you say it?
A sommelier.
I can't even freaking talk. So ghetto.
So okay.
Say it again. How do you say it?
Sommelier.
Yeah, sommelier. Take this part out of the podcast.
All right. So now that we've gotten to the wine, we can definitely get to the Chisme. I really kind of want to start because you have a really very cool past. You're originally from Medellin, Colombia.
Sí, señorita.
And how old were you when you moved to New Jersey?
I was 6 years old. I moved to Rhode Island first, Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And then a couple years afterwards, my parents migrated to New Jersey.
And what was we're around the same age. And I would only imagine we are. I know.
I was gonna cry just thinking of my age, but no.
Okay. It's because I've said my age a lot of time on the podcast. So.
I'm like, don't say my age. Nah, I don't care. I'm kidding.
Girl, we still look good.
You know it. Latina skin.
That's right. So I can only imagine just how things were in Colombia at that time. What was like I would imagine that's what prompted your parents to move in regards to is like the violence and a lot of stuff happening with the drug trade and stuff because everything was happening in Colombia. Is that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There was a lot of social and political unrest, a lot of war crimes and drug crimes going on within my city, Medellin, since that was like the headquarters where Pablo Escobar lived. At that time, I had an aunt who came to the U.S. on a student visa, and she met a Puerto Rican guy, and she got married. And she petitioned for us to come to the U.S. because we could see already, what was coming. Life was hard. My father, I think he got robbed and kind of kidnapped in a bank once. So they were
like, oh my gosh, seriously?
Oh, crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Firsthand. And I remember, walking out of the house once to go to the movie theaters. And as soon as my dad and I walked out, the bank blew up and, exploded. And the next day when we went back, I remember just, being a kid and seeing like limbs hanging from a tree. So we're like, okay, we have to go. And we moved to the U.S. in about 1985, March 9th, as when we arrived to Providence, Rhode Island. First, it was me and my dad, so we can get situated. And 6 months later, my mom joined us with my two younger brothers. One of them was about 2 or 3, and then the baby was 6 months old. And we're so glad that my aunt petitioned for us to move to the U.S. because I believe 2 or 3 years later, Pablo Escobar bombed the Avianca airliner. And then that's when Colombia was officially put on the terrorist watch list, and there was like no more visas to be handed out.
Oh my gosh, that is so crazy. How was that transition movie? I mean, I'm sure obviously there was a huge element of relief when you and your dad first got here, but as I would imagine it's also fearful because your mom and your brothers are still there. But what
Yeah.
was that transition like coming from Colombia to the States?
There were so many layers to it, Jessica. There's so many layers. Part of it was, my dad and I are like besties, so I was
I
happy to be.
know.
I thought I was, I thought that. We've been to eat. All three of us have eaten together in Dallas, and he loves you and dearly remembers you. But yeah, so when we first traveled together, at first I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going on a trip with my dad. I don't think I really understood what was happening. And because I think I was brought at the age of 6 years old, I was already kind of identifying or becoming self-aware of who I was as a Colombian, young girl. And then to be uprooted and taken from everything that I kind of knew already to a new country, I felt really lost at the same time. So even though I was safe, there was part of me that just felt confused, and I had to find a whole new identity, I thought, at first. And it was hard to navigate that life because I didn't have an older sister or someone that could really talk to me to make me feel acclimated or assimilated. My parents, this was a new journey for them as well. So for a long time, I was navigating who I was prior to moving to the US and being kind of, this new identity in a new country with a new language, new people.
And you're the oldest because you have two younger brothers. How were you expected to help them with their transit? I mean, obviously your youngest brother was still a baby, but your middle brother, he was still a couple years old at the time. Were you expected to kind of help with that transition as well? Because and how was how quickly were you able to pick up English and everything at that point too? Because you're literally an immigrant, coming. You probably still don't know the language at 6 years old. So you're having to learn the language, probably help your parents at the same time, help navigate you're the oldest. You're having to help navigate everything that's happening from them. And I'm sure having to take some sort of role just by being the oldest and being a girl with your brothers.
I completely get the question. There's a lot of also layers to that question, but I completely get it because it's exactly what I lived. So I remember when I came in March, obviously I didn't know the language. I remember almost a year later, January, knowing the language because my birthday is around Martin Luther King's birthday. And I remember they played his speech on the radio back then. They used to play always the I Have a Dream speech. So I remember when one day my father turned on the radio in the car and I completely understood the whole speech. And so I remember that it took me about, 9 months to know the language. I was 7 years old at the time. And as being the oldest and learning English first, I was expected to go with my parents to a lot of different offices and social services too, because when my parents first got here, they weren't making enough money. So I was the one that had to interpret for them. I was the one that had to go with them to enroll us into school. It became there was a lot of responsibility. And also if we came home from school, I'm the one that had to do, wash the dishes. And I'm the one that had to take care of my brothers while my parents were working 2 different jobs. It's something I feel like it's part of the immigrant experience that you have just been giving all this responsibility. And with that also comes the fact that your parents sacrificed so much and now you have to make them proud because they gave up so much to come to a country that they barely knew so you could be safe.
So you came to Rhode Island. At what point did you guys move to New Jersey? And what was
3 years later? Yeah, 3 years later. My godmother, she always she petitioned for a family. She has 4 sisters and 7 brothers. Not all of them decided to come, but about 80%. So what she would do, she would bring a family, let them live with her for about a year until they got situated. And we did that. But my mom has always been a person that likes to live close to family, but not too close. She likes to have her own space. So about
Sounds
2 or 3
like
years
me.
after being, es mejor lejitos, alejados. So about 3 years afterwards, my mom was like, okay, let's move to New Jersey. Being next to family is cool, but sometimes in Latino families and probably a lot of families, everybody just gets up in everybody's business. And my parents with 3 kids, a lot of pressure. They wanted to make sure that their marriage stayed intact and didn't let, different ears influence how their journey should be.
Oh my gosh.
Different mouths influence their ears.
Yes. No, that's what my parents would always call us, ears, anybody who wasn't supposed to be around. They're like, the ears are around, that was your warning. The ears are around. So So if it was 3 years, so you're probably about what, 9 or 10 by the time you moved to Jersey. So
Yeah, 9 or 10 years old.
almost
Around
middle
there.
school age. What was
I
your
think, I think I was like a fifth or
fifth
sixth
grade?
grade. Yeah.
So what was your middle school and high school experience? Because when I describe you and people are like, if people will see eventually, they'll see a picture and we may use some of the video and everything, but I like just looking at you, and we've had these conversations, like you are a bombshell. You have like bombshell looks.
Oh, thank you.
You know what I mean? Like people are like, damn, you know.
Well, thank you.
And I've seen pictures of you when you're younger and everything, and I know that when you look a little bit older or you develop a little bit more when you're in middle school or high school, that can give people different perceptions. How, like, were you somebody who kind of developed like that in middle school and high school, or was that afterwards?
I was a late bloomer. I think that's why I look young now. I mean, at 18, I looked 13. At 13, I looked probably 8. I was a late bloomer, and I was extremely self-conscious. Like I said, when I first came to this country, I felt lost. Like, who am I? And I remember just, looking at my cousins and didn't want to tell them about trying to copy their style. And I was always trying to be someone else but myself when I was really young. And just because I just felt like there were so many eyes on me, and I didn't know if being me was the right thing to do, or who was I really, essentially. So I was very thin. I felt awkward, like a ugly duckling. But it's funny because when I talk to my friends, their perception of me at that time was so different than the perception I had of myself. And looking back at pictures, I'm like, oh my God, I was so hard on myself. I should have been softer and kinder and gentler. But I think all of that, it's not a mistake. It's made me who I am today. I always knew, even though I felt awkward, that I was special. So I had a lot of love for my parents. I always knew, okay, I know I'm a little awkward, but I'm going to grow up and do something and be something great.
I feel like that's something very similar that a lot of successful people have in common, is like they just know regardless that they're destined for something bigger. And sometimes you don't even know what it is, but you're like, I know that there's more. I know that there's more for me. And I think it's so having the courage to just be able to dream that, because so many of us, and me included, like the podcast is the first time, and I know I've discussed it with you, is the first time in my life that I feel like I'm in my adult life, that I feel like I'm truly doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
I think it's great that you found that. I don't think it's ever too late. I think the path to our purpose is different for everyone. So even though you're doing it now, you're probably like, oh my God, I should have started way earlier. The reason that it's happening now is for a reason. You're wiser. You have this great network of friends. You've acquired all this knowledge from your job history. So it's destined to happen now.
It is. So you eventually entered the pageant world, right?
It's a South American thing. You can't not.
Okay, so I need to hear how this happened, because I don't think I mean, me and you have discussed it and stuff, but I feel like you've never really talked about it. So I need to hear, like
thousands of years ago.
But still, this is still something that really influenced your life at some point. So I need to hear like how that happened and what was the progress of all of that.
Okay. So, how you were saying that, you and your adult life you're finally doing what you really love. Mm-hmm. Well, since I was 4 years old, I knew I wanted to be on TV. I knew I wanted to tell stories. I would tell all my friends, which is funny. My elementary friends tell me now, I remember sitting on the front stoop and you're like, I'm going to be on TV one day. Mm-hmm. And I just knew it. So part of the pageantry is just, it's in the Latino blood, right? We grow up, it's such a big part of our culture to sit down around, Miss Universe time or Miss Colombia time, Miss World time, to sit there and watch these women and their answers, because I think it's a way to bring our culture to the universe. So part of me thought of it like, okay, I'm Colombian, I live in the US, but I want to represent my culture. And at the same time, I felt like this could be a stepping stone for my future career. So I remember hearing on the radio once, like Colombian radio station, that they were holding auditions for Miss Colombia USA, which then could lead to Miss World. And I was like, okay, I have to do this. I think I was already 19, 20 years old. It was a perfect time. It was at a time where I was feeling a bit more confident about myself. And I also wanted to learn about myself and have a lot of female friends. Growing up in my teens, I didn't have many, but as I started getting, more self-confident, the friendship bond between females became a really important topic for me in my life and something that I wanted to explore and have more of. And I thought this was the perfect way. So I went to Queens, from Jersey to Queens with my dad, auditioned, and I loved it. The pageant people loved me and went through the whole process. And it was, to be honest, truly incredible. Nerve-wracking because all the answers and all the questions and everything was in Spanish. Mind you, I'd already been living here for like 18 years or 15 years. I don't go off my math. I'm a journalist, not a mathematician. But, more than a decade. And so it was fun. And a typical Colombian thing, there was a bomb scare the freaking first day.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's so crazy, but I had a great time. I took home the prize. I also won most, Miss Congeniality. Me, the girl who didn't really have a lot of girlfriends growing up, all of a sudden has a handful of female friends, and it just felt amazing.
So what happened from that? Did you go to Worlds or anything from?
No, I didn't. I went to college because all the events took place while school was going on. And I remember, going back to that initial feeling that when you come to this country, you have to make something of yourself to make your parents proud. And what I loved about that feeling was, one, my parents were very supportive. They were never like, you have to do this. Most parents, when they come from a different country, become a lawyer, become a doctor because they want something sure, something secure. Whereas my parents were like, I don't care what you do, just go to school. And so for me, giving up like 1 or 2 years of school to go on a pageant, maybe could have been more lucrative. Who knows? But at that time, my mind was like, no, I have to go to school.
So what would you say one of the biggest lessons you learned from the pageant world was?
It's self-confidence and how valuable friendship is. It's a community that is so important. It lifts you up, and it's lifted me up during times where I didn't even believe in myself. So prior to that, like I said, I didn't have a lot of female friends. There was always like jealousy, or, sometimes in the Latino world, they don't really teach you that friendship is the number one thing. It's always like finding love, like finding your mate. That was like the number one lesson that I felt was ingrained to me. So friendship was, something that was, it was cool, but it wasn't a priority for me. So that the pageantry world just taught me how important friends are going to be for you the rest of your life.
So then you decided to go back to school. Where did you end up going to school from there?
Montclair State University. I already had a degree for English, but I knew that my passion was journalism. So then I went back to school, used my degree for English to teach kindergarten, to pay for school while I got my journalism degree with concentration in Latin American studies.
So at what point, because then obviously you meet your baby daddy.
My baby daddy. Who that baby daddy? Just my baby daddy. So I met my daughter's dad, and it's such a funny story because, he was the first love of my life. I would say that. He was my first pure love. I'd had crushes before that, but the way it happened, I felt it was meant to be. I was 20 years old, and it was right after the pageant. And we were celebrating, I think, the fact of the pageant. I've never been to spring break. My parents are super strict.
Of course.
So I was like 20 years old, and I'm still not allowed spring break. No, I'm going to break free my rebellious self. So my friends and I decided we're going to go. We took my car, packed it up, and drove to Florida. And one of the nights, the last night, we checked out. That was the year that Freaknik was canceled here in Georgia, in Atlanta. So there was tons of people, but also tons of crimes happening because I think the city was just overwhelmed. So when we checked out of the hotel, we went to go to my car to, drive back home, and somebody had hit my car. It was a drunk driver. And a person from across the street in the hotel saw it, and they gave me down the license plate, everything. So I had to call police because they were so overwhelmed and concerned with higher, risk crimes. They're like, I remember it was 10 o'clock at night, and they're like, oh, we'll be there at 8 in the morning. I was like, 8 in the morning? What the fuck am I gonna do till then? So I was like, let's go to the club. So me and my girl,
dance it off.
Yeah, I was like, let's just go dance it off for the next 4 or 5 hours. So I remember me and my girls and my best friend, this guy Caesar, was just like, let's go to the club. Went to the club. I saw this really like handsome Latino guy with curly hair, his cut, at that time in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. And I was his Timbs and his jeans. I was like, ooh, he cute. And he thought I was pretty too. So I felt amazing. And we start dancing. And he's like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm Colombian. He's like, I'm Colombian too. And I was like, whoa, sparks even, get bigger. And he's like, where do you live? I'm like, Jersey. He's like, me too. And we're like, okay. And he's like, what town? I'm like, Elmwood Park. He's like, me too.
What?
Let me see your He's like, let me see your license. My boys put you up to this? I'm like, no. And I showed him my license, and we're both from the same city. And it was just like, we never met before. Mind you, he had been living in Miami for like about a year, but he was going to move back to New Jersey in a month. So we just couldn't believe we didn't know each other, and we kept in touch through AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh my gosh, I remember AOL.
And I just knew from the moment we met, like, this guy was going to be something special. And his family got along great with my family. We dated for years and years and years and years. And then 3 years after dating, we had Jolie. We stayed together for a few more years after that. Then it was like on and off because I started moving around for work, and it was just off. But still, obviously family. We have a great daughter together. So I feel like he was meant to come into my life to teach me pure love, and also to be the daddy to my daughter.
So after you had Jolie, who is, who I've not been able to meet in person, who I've only talked to through FaceTime. How did
my mini?
Yes. How did that affect your career and your career goals? Like, where did you start your career? Were you able to stay in Jersey with Jolie, or how were you able to manage that? How did that kind of affect your whole career trajectory at the very beginning?
Well, it completely changed my life. As soon as I got pregnant with her, I felt like Mother Earth just like ascended inside of me and took over. And I just felt so empowered, and my visions just became bigger. And I think that's when kind of I knew her dad and I weren't going to last, because he would tell me, like, after you graduate college, just stay here, work at a bank, and we can get married like 3 years later. But my vision for myself was so much grander than that I was like, okay, we're definitely going to grow apart. So I was still in my senior year of college when I had her, and I graduated. Jolie was actually at my graduation. She was about like 7 months old. And once I had her, I knew that I couldn't stay in New Jersey because I didn't have the experience yet to be like a number one market in TV, and I had to move. So I started moving around with her. And even, things were so difficult. I remember my first job in South Florida was making $25,000, no health insurance, with a baby by myself, and moments that I cried and I wanted to give up. But she gave me the strength to persevere and to be resilient, because for me, there was no other option but to succeed. I had a daughter that I wanted to make proud. I didn't want to be broke and poor. Like, I knew what that felt like, and that's not the best feeling. And so she just made sure that I stayed on track, kept fighting. And I'm also a gypsy. I believe in love. So sometimes I would meet guys and get all these crushes and start thinking like 10 years down the line, I could see myself with them. But if it wasn't for her, I would have moved to so many different countries from different people that I've met. So she kept me grounded, like, okay, that is not a possibility. That is not reality right now. I have to stay here and stay focused.
Was there ever the conversation of Jolie's dad moving with you, or was it always like, no, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be? Especially if you took a job in South Florida, he lived in Miami. I mean, I'm sure it's something he was, maybe if it wasn't in Miami, it was something he was familiar with. Was there ever those?
Well, and I lived in Naples, which is like Southwest Florida, but that's not even the issue with him. When I met Jolie's dad, he was very much like a mama's boy. And I'm not saying that in a bad thing, but he liked to be close to family, which I love family too, but I was much more of a traveler. I'm more independent because of the fact that I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl. He's the only boy, but he's the baby of the family.
Oh, yeah.
So he has two older sisters. So he was always like, let's just stay here in Jersey. And he already started his own business. So for him, it was beneficial to be in New Jersey, whereas for myself, I could not start my career in New Jersey. I tried. I sent out like hundreds of resumes, and there's nobody would take. So it wasn't until Florida. And yeah, so that wasn't a possibility. And then I also knew that we were just growing apart. I also felt young, like I didn't have enough wisdom in my mental archives, to deal with just graduating college, being a new mom, going through postpartum depression, taking on a relationship, as a married couple. I was not ready for that yet. And so the best thing and the healthiest thing was to separate. We always stayed friends. I mean, mind you, we bicker because that energy has transformed from love to like brother and sister to now, we co-parent. But it just it changed, and I always knew that the best thing, the healthiest thing would be to raise Jolie like that, as two people who never had to fight in front of her, and she wasn't raised in an unhealthy environment. So it worked out for us.
So you touched on postpartum depression, and I know it's different for everybody. How did you know that something's really different? Like, how was your postpartum depression experience?
Yeah, I remember even with him, and he, he would tell me a joke and we would start laughing, and 5 seconds later I would just cry for no reason. And I was like, ooh, there's something off. And my hormones were all over the place, and I had a lot going on. I was in my last year of college. I was working at a bank part-time like a teller, and I was being a mom. I was trying to be a wife at 25, which to me is really young. For some people it's not,
totally.
But for me it was a lot because I had a lot going on. So, I remember just being in the shower and just tears would come, or there would be bouts of extreme happiness. So I knew I was not in balance. And then I would just overanalyze everything in my life. Like, am I really going to make it? Did I just waste 4 years of school and get pregnant for no reason? Am I going to become this Latina statistic? All these things that just kept going through my mind that typically would not be there because I had a little bit more confidence than that. But because I was so emotional, I couldn't stop these negative thoughts from entering my being.
Were you ever able to see anybody to talk about that? Or was that something that you just tried to deal with on your own?
I did. I dealt with it on my own. To be honest, I can't say I never went to therapy. I went to therapy like one time because that's what my insurance paid for, and then I had to pay for the rest. So then I didn't go back. But thankfully, I'm in a career where I get to interview a lot of people. So I've met life coaches through it. I've met therapists, and they've become my friends. So I just talked it out. And I'm just a person too who's always been like a go-getter, a fixer. And I've always believed in the spiritual world and something higher than myself. And I read so much. These are things that I did on my own without anyone telling me about it. I just read. I knew that there was something wrong. I knew that postpartum was postpartum. I watched a lot of movies, a lot of TV. So just life experiences informed me that there was something off, and they also helped me talk to myself and journal and work through them.
So how long did you end up staying in South Florida for that first job?
So in South Florida for 3 years, and then I got laid off. The show that I was co-hosting a morning show. It was like a talk show, and they wanted to hire a guy because there was two females. So they hired a guy. I was laid off. And then my next job was in South Texas by the border of Harlingen and Reynosa, Matamoros, which is a big area at the time when I was there for cartel crimes. Mm-hmm. So I went there to anchor a Spanish evening newscast and also produce another one, produce the English one and anchor the English one, and cover immigration and border crimes. And Jolie's traveled everywhere with me. I was in South Texas for 2 years.
And then from there, because I mean, obviously, as you know, obviously I know you, but yeah. I know a lot of news people, and I know you guys go from market to market in order to.
Yeah, so that was Market 81.
Build your career.
Yeah, it was Market 81, but it was great because I was doing a morning show, which was kind of fluff, to finally getting this news credit notch under my belt. And it was trial by fire because I had to shoot my own work, edit it, produce, anchor in Spanish and English, but it was great learning experience. Definitely a culture clash from New Jersey to go to South Texas where everybody's just Mexican or Mexican American. I'm the only Colombian. I can't find Colombian food. I mean, I love Mexican food and tacos.
Let me just say, this girl can put down tacos like nobody's business.
I'm petite, but I can compete.
Yes, you can. I think you can out-taco me when it comes to the amount of tacos.
Yeah, no, and I love it, but I'm also a person that's never liked to be in a place where there's just one culture. I love to be in diverse environments. That's how I grew up in Jersey with Macedonian friends, Polish friends, Italian, Cubans, Puerto Ricans. So even when I'm in Miami sometimes for too long, I'm like, okay, too many Cubans, too many Colombians. I need to be around more people. So in South Texas, it was really difficult. It was a culture clash, and it's a kind of a forgotten part, I felt, of the US. There wasn't at the time a lot of, talk about green food or organic or healthy, but I met great people, great friends that I'm still friends with till this day, and the most loyal viewers ever. From there, I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, Market 24. So I did a big jump, Market 81 to Market 24.
And you had a pretty, I think Charlotte, you were there for a while, but towards the end of Charlotte, I know you had a pretty challenging time, which I'm sure I would love for you to kind of say what that growth was, because
it was a must. It was a painful, Charlotte was one of the most painful places I've lived in.
Because you had a lot of, I was about to say, because it wasn't just professionally, it was personally. So if you don't mind, kind of whatever you would like to get into in regards to that.
I'm an open book.
I mean, obviously I know because we've talked about it, but I just think there's so much wisdom that people can get. Obviously, I've even referred other reporters to you in regards to the stuff that I know you've gone through in that, because obviously if you didn't go through what you did there, you wouldn't have gone to Dallas and we would have never met.
I know.
So I'm kind of grateful for all of that. So why don't you go ahead and kind of explain.
So let me wrap up these 3 years of Charlotte. I lived there for 3 years, and at first it was great. I was the girl that everybody was excited to have at the station. I was getting all these cool stories. It was awesome. But I also was new. I'd only been in one market prior to that. And I think because the market in South Texas was small, I was able to make a lot of mistakes and not a big deal. And there wasn't as much required. So when I arrived to Charlotte, news-wise, after about a year, it was really intense, and I was getting put on harder stories, and I started doubting myself. And I don't think it wasn't that I was not good. I was learning for sure, and it would have been great to have a mentor, but I started really doubting myself. And then once I let those doubts creep in, the cracks just kept getting bigger and bigger. And it almost became paralyzing. So around that time that I started doubting myself, I fell completely in love with this Charlotte Hornets basketball player who I met while I was emceeing an event. And I remember seeing him, and my heart was like, this guy is going to hurt me. I just knew it. But I wanted to be in love with him so bad. And he also felt like, from what he tells me, that this was the most beautiful girl, and we were going to be together. So then we started dating, and part of that dating, I felt so seen and validated that this man of high stature liked me and cared about me, all while I was feeling all this self-doubt at work. So I wanted this relationship to kind of fill this void that I was feeling, or these insecurities that I was feeling, which wasn't good. And so little by little, I started concentrating more on the relationship and the work situation. My work started sliding, but then my relationship wasn't great because I was dating someone who, some things for him were permissible to behave a certain way because he was in a world that no one says no to him. So now I find myself really questioning who I am, because I'm a person that's always lived with integrity. And I remember waking up some mornings and saying, I would not forgive this from a regular guy. Why am I forgiving this from this guy? And then I would always, you always make excuses because you want to make it work, and you could only take so much. And I remember one day just waking up and saying, I don't even recognize you, Astrid. And that meant more to me than being with this ultra successful, super gorgeous man. So once that relationship started deteriorating, to me, it was I went through the biggest depression. And not only that, at the same time that all this was happening, my work schedule changed so much that I had to send my daughter to live in New Jersey, because now I was working nights and weekends. And I think my station did that on purpose, because I wasn't getting along with my boss, because I wasn't really doing great. And the perception became that I didn't care, but I did care. I was just going through so much. I was going through a mental breakdown, to be honest with you, but I didn't know how to tell it to people, nor, should I don't know. I only told it to my brother. And so I had to send my daughter away, felt a lot of super guilt about that. I was trying to hold on so tight to this relationship that wasn't working, that fell apart. And then while all that's going on, then my job is falling apart. But coming out on the other side of it has been incredible. And I know that everything that I went through in those 3 years was some of the biggest lessons that I had to become more self-confident, to become more loving of myself, to not need validation from anyone, to know that I actually am a gift to someone, and to value myself more. It's just so many lessons, and also just to show up in honesty, to show up in who, as the person that I am, which I know now I feel like magic. So when I show up in a relationship, I only give this magic of myself to very few people and selective. And obviously if they mess up, they mess up, but I feel like you're getting a gift here. So use it wisely. But yeah, so that led me to be unemployed because I couldn't be in that city anymore. I had to leave Charlotte. I couldn't see my ex playing or hearing his interviews on the radio. It was just too much and I needed a life break. I was going nuts. I went home for a little while and there was a time where I went, I felt like, who's going to want me right now? I don't have a job. I'm 30 something. I'm back home rethinking my life. And am I even really good at my job? And all of a sudden, like 6 months later, it took 6 months for me to get my next job, was Dallas. And I was like, what the hell? Market 5 wants to hire me after I kind of almost effed up in Market 24. But it was a saving grace. And I took it as the world's, God's second chance to really focus on me, to build myself back up a foundation and to get stronger in every aspect of my life. So when I went to Dallas, I was like, I'm going to get this done. I went there with all this fire in my belly. I took it as the biggest second chance ever. And it was definitely the turning point from where I'm at today.
I mean, I remember us having a conversation before where you were telling me about Charlotte and you were saying how you felt just like you were saying that you were unhireable, that you didn't know who was going to hire you after all of the stuff that went down in Charlotte, just feeling like you had left with a bad reputation, basically. Mm-hmm. And you,
and it was also a city that I wasn't happy and I couldn't be myself. I remember there were no Latinas in my news station. There was one, but she left, a little bit after I started. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. There's just so many other things. I didn't feel comfortable in this southern town that was like, you'd go to church and be like, bless your heart. And then as you walk away, they're talking crap. And I was just like, this city, everything about that place was wrong for me. So, and I think that's why I love Atlanta so much, because I can post a picture of me being this very passionate, and I'm a spicy Latina who's also educated and spiritual and who loves family and who loves love. And this city gets it. But I think it also gets it because I stand up for myself. I didn't stand up for myself in Charlotte. But so, everything's also relative. Everything's also timing. So there was just so many things mentally, physically, personally that were not meant to work out in Charlotte. And I think that's for a reason.
So when you came to Dallas, what was your intention? Because you came to Dallas as a freelancer for the NBC station there. What was your true goals? Because I know you also didn't bring Jolie because you were coming as a freelancer, and I know how much guilt you carried with yourself. How did you first of all balance that? Because she's in Charlotte with you. You have to, because of your schedule change, and I'm sure you didn't want her to see this relationship or how you were handling these things with the relationship. I can only imagine as a mother because obviously, I'm not a mom, but I can only imagine the guilt you would have. I love this
crazy
person
guilt.
And I'm trying to figure this out, but I don't want my daughter to see me losing my shit over a man. How do you balance that?
So the great thing is that I have an amazing family and she has a great dad. So when the schedule started to change, he was like, send her to live with me. I want to also, help her with homework. I've never done that. And I needed the break, but I didn't send her away because I needed the break. I needed to just figure life out without traumatizing her. And I've done an amazing job up until then of doing it not on my own, but by myself. So yes, there was a lot of guilt, but I'm so glad that I got it, and I picked a great father. He's a great man. Obviously, we didn't work out, but he's a great man. He's a great father. He dotes on his daughter, and I love that. So I had to do that. I had to send her there. Tons of guilt. I still feel guilt to this day. She was living with me here for last year, and she went back home in August because she just felt lonely in Atlanta, and she has a stepsister and a half brother. So I feel guilt to this day, but I still feel super connected, and my best friend is my daughter because we worked on that relationship. But I went to Dallas not with the intention of staying there because, her dad and I had a conversation that if you want to live with her, I don't want her to be anywhere else but the East Coast. So go there, get your chops together, get your your gravitas back, get your confidence back, and then try to get a job in the East Coast. So I went there also just filling in for some of the anchors who were pregnant. It was always with the intention that I was only going to be there for like about a year. And so I just wanted to kick ass, get the best reel ever. I remember the news director there, just always told me, you're good, you just need more confidence. And when he said that, I was like, man, this guy in a top 5 station thinks I'm good. Whereas my news director didn't talk to me like that in Charlotte. I was like, shit, I must be good. And once I started believing in myself, everything changed. The doors opened for everything. Life just seemed, more amazing. Goals seemed more attainable. And right when the time was up for me to leave Dallas, you were there. It was time for me to start auditioning for other stations. And then I get Bell's palsy.
Yes.
And I was like,
but it's because you ran yourself ragged. Let's be real. You applied for this like fellowship thing that took you to Israel. So you were all over. You were gone for what, 10 days, I think?
Yeah, I was gone for 2 weeks. And then I'd never experienced like allergies in my life. So I remember being really sick before I left in Dallas, like crazy allergies. My ears were hurting. And then partying because I was in a brand new city. And, I like to have fun.
Yes.
So I like to have fun. I like to go out. So it was this combination to this long ass flight to Israel where, yes, we were working, but we were also partying. The journalists at night, we were having all kinds of wines and different events because they wanted us to get the most out of this trip. So my body took a beating for about 3 to 4 weeks. And on the trip back, I just felt my ears ringing like if they were both gonna bleed. I remember it just felt like this hot burning sensation. And the crazy thing is I had read about an anchor in New York who had, recovered from Bell's palsy. And all the symptoms that he was, he wrote about, I started feeling that. I remember telling you like, oh my God, my eye, I can't blink my eye. And you're like, maybe you're dehydrated. And I was
I just picked you up from the airport, right? I picked you up from the airport and you're just like, oh my gosh, my eye. So, because that's always the very first thing that I try and do is like just anything. I always start with water. Right?
Yeah. And I was like, nah, bitch, I got Bell's palsy.
You're dehydrated. That affects everything else. But you're just like, no, I know it's more. And you didn't even go home. You're just like, I'm just going to stay here.
I stayed with you.
I was like, okay.
I stayed with you. And I called a great friend of mine who is a doctor. And I didn't have a job anymore because my freelance finished. I didn't even have insurance. But I always have angels like yourself, like so many friends. And that's why I'm telling you, like friendship has saved me in so many occasions. I called this doctor and his wife and I was like, hey, I don't have health insurance, but I think this is what I got. Can I come over? Can you check me out? I'll pay. And he and his wife came to your house, checked me out and brought me the medicine for free. And I was I don't know, I felt touched by an angel, but also like, what the fuck is going on with my face? But thankfully I caught it early because I read that article and I'm typically not a hypochondriac, but I knew the moment that my eye was twitching and tearing and nonstop tearing, I was like, I have Bell's palsy.
No, you're totally right. I actually had an interview with somebody else and she's Colombian as well. She's una colombiana and she was diagnosed with, now all of a sudden I forget, not multiple sclerosis, now all of a sudden I've just totally forgotten.
Blanked out.
She was saying it all starts in your eye, and the reason your eye starts twitching is it's a result of stress.
Yeah, well, the nerve was so swollen that when it's swollen, it doesn't work. It's paralyzed, so it gets inflamed. And when it gets inflamed, it stops working, and that's why the whole face droops.
And that's why I had no idea that was an indicator. So my eye doesn't twitch very often, but when I do now, I've realized, what's happening? Like, it's almost like a way to check in with myself. Like, am I too stressed out? What's happening? Do I need to take a step back? But I mean, obviously you went through that, and then within, not too much later, you were on your way. Your parents had moved to Atlanta, and you decided that that's where you wanted to be, because at this point you still didn't have a job. So I think you were going between your parents' house outside of Atlanta.
Well, yeah, we bought a house for my parents in Georgia prior to me even coming here, because I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And my parents wanted to retire here. So we helped them do that. And I always wanted to actually live in Atlanta because I knew CNN was here, plus it's in the East Coast. And I was like, perfect, move to Atlanta. I'll be reunited with my daughter again. Let's do it. I've been coming here already with 10 years of news under my belt. I had to take a job as an MMJ, which means shoot your own camera work and edit and report. And the news director who hired me said, you're never going to have to do it. We just have to hire you with that because we don't have any other position available, which really is just, code for we're going to pay you less. And I was like, you know what, this is a sacrifice. And I've always felt like that. So that's why when I talk to reporters and they're like, I'm a year into my career, I'm not going to take a step back. I'm like, dude, you have to sometimes pay your dues over and over again. Here I am at like 35, 36, coming to a new city, never having to really do camera work except for that first job ever, doing it again, right? When I should be, already at this point in my career. But it's a sacrifice. I wanted to be close to my family. I wanted to be in Atlanta. I knew this was a city that had a lot of different big, news hubs, and I could possibly thrive there because I knew I had the talent now and I had the confidence. I was armed. So I moved here, and the first year and a half was a miserable AF, because I was doing that. And when my news director actually got fired before I started, so the new one that started, he made me do my camera work. He made me edit, which is really incredibly difficult. You don't learn that in 2 weeks. Camera guys take years to become camera guys.
Which is crazy that, MMJ, for people that don't know, stands for multimedia journalist. And like you said, they shoot their own stories, they produce their own stories, they edit, do camera, everything, which is a way for people like news stations to keep payroll down. But if you're doing all that, you should actually be paid more because you're the one who's doing it.
Yeah, but you're looked at as less.
Yeah.
Because so okay, that happened. And then I hated it for the first year and a half. And I cried. I remember telling my agent, like, what the F did I do that I'm at the city? She's like, Astrid, we're going to try to get you out of there. Don't worry. And I couldn't understand, like, why would God bring me here to make me feel this way? After Charlotte. I was doing so great in Dallas, but I couldn't be in Dallas because then I couldn't be with my daughter. And I was just like, man, maybe this career is not for me. So it was actually like I was going to give up. And I was already starting to look at doing jobs like a PIO, public information officer for schools, which is usually the ones that we interview when something happens at schools. And I actually make more money than MMJs. So I was already starting to look into that when all of a sudden my news director gets fired. And I was like, and I only had 6 months left in my contract. So the news director gets fired, a new one starts. And I just pitch him this idea that I had. I'm a person, that I know one of my attributes is that that I'm pretty female. And because of that, and I also think because I'm kind and I'm honest, I've been able to really network and I draw people to me. So I already had met all these celebrities. I went to Paris with Ludacris for his 40th birthday. And I had all these contacts and I knew that the industry was booming. So I pitched this idea to my boss. I said, listen, we're missing this in Atlanta. There's red carpets going on every day. All these, movie stars are here, these musicians. And I am really good at, being in their presence without the wives feeling intimidated or them feeling awkward.
But I want to stop you really quick because you're missing this whole thing, which shows like your ambition and your tenacity to get what you want, because you were friends with the chef of Ludacris who was going to Paris and he invited you to go with him as his guest. You pitched that to your news director as, hey, I have this opportunity to go to Paris. You created the opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
I think as women and as Latinas, we don't always take that opportunity to do that. You created the opportunity and said, hey, I have this. If I get a story from this, will you pay for my ticket?
Yeah.
And he literally was like, oh, we'll reimburse you. If you pay for it and you come back with something that we can use, then we'll pay for it. So I think that's
so I pay for everything.
Yes. I think that's a very key thing.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me that, because I forget. Like sometimes I just think like it's normal, but I created it for myself. So I was going to go to Paris and I told my boss, I was like, listen, I'm going to go to Paris. I go to Paris and I come back with stories and context. Let's create a segment called Astrid and the ATL. And I did that specifically. So in case I ever was let go or I ever left, they couldn't use my segment without me in it.
Right.
So I went to Paris and I made contacts and I came back and I did stories. I became friends with people. I interviewed Oprah because of all these connections that I made. And my boss was like astonished. Mind you, I never got my money back, but I did get my days taken. Like instead of the days, I took off as vacation, I got them back so I could take vacation again later on. But, and that's how my segment was launched, by myself, grassroots, going out into the community, making a lane for myself. Nothing was done. I created this space. I created Astrid in the ATL. Obviously, I thank my boss so much because he gave me the platform and he gave me the opportunity. But I figured like this is do or die. If this news director comes and my contract ends in 6 months, I'm going to be like a 37-year-old something like I felt like would have wasted her college years, would have wasted all these years of news. And I did not want to be a PIO. I just felt like I had to take that job. So I created it and I poured everything into it. Finally, I was able to get my daughter to come live with me. Life right now is the best that it ever could be. And I just live in such gratitude every day because I see all these blessings unraveling and manifesting that I've worked so hard for 10, 11 years. And now in the last 2-3 years, I've won Emmys. I am respected and loved in the community and I love the community back. So it's like now I'm reaping all the benefits of all the mierda I went through.
I mean, I think that's awesome because, I met you at a really, I think, integral time in your life in Dallas and everything. And you come across very, very confident. But then when I got to know you, it's like I got to know like the real Astrid.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to hear your insecurities and your, like the things that you were scared of and your transition coming from Charlotte. And it really made me realize because a lot of times people look at somebody who is, who seems to kind of have it all. And that's in any industry or any person, or we just look at people by what they look like and think, oh, they must have everything that they want. And I know that there's things that you still want for your life. And I know that there's still things that you're still reaching for. So just to be able to share that and see the transition in you and the confidence in you, how that's grown since I've known you, I love seeing that. How do you think Latinas are perceived in news, particularly in English-speaking news versus Spanish-speaking news?
Well, I want to go back to that thing, like you come across so self-confident. It's funny because when I've been interviewed by other friends, like high school friends or college friends, they always say like, when you walked into the room, even in high school, you commanded a presence, like you seem so sure. And it's so funny because the whole time I'd be inside like, oh, biting my nails. I was so insecure. And it's crazy, the perception or the image that I put out. And I think it's the image of who I wanted to be, but I wasn't there yet. And I'm definitely there now. And I'm there now because of, life and really putting in the work to know myself. The perception of Latinas in the news, I think it depends on who you ask. Because for me, working in markets where there were not a lot of Latinos like Charlotte, in Dallas, in South Texas, yes, there's a lot of Latinos, but there's also differences within Latinos. I would be criticized sometimes like, oh, you don't speak Mexican. I'm like, well, we all speak Spanish. I don't have a dialect in Mexican. So I have Colombian, and some people would embrace this and some people wouldn't. So you're always like constantly fighting if you're Latina enough or not Latina enough, or you're this Latina or not Latina. And when it comes to the English media, I never felt seen in Charlotte. I never felt understood. So I think that's why diversity is so important, not only for people on camera, but for people that are making decisions in the newsroom about what stories are getting told, which there wasn't. There was always white males or white females that were in charge of making the decisions of stories. So I never felt comfortable. I never felt championed. And in Atlanta, I definitely feel that. There's stereotypes too, that if you're pretty, you should go work at Univision. And that's like comments that I would get, which I don't think it's a bad comment, but I don't get where that comes from. They're like, oh, you're so pretty, you should work at Univision. I'm like, well, why can't I work at an English, speaking station? Well, I don't get what that means. I know that I've had to prove myself. I felt that I deserved a place in the newsroom, that I didn't get there because I was pretty, or I didn't get there just because of the diversity hire. So those are things that I felt I've had to prove as a brown person in the media.
You were named one of the 50 most influential Latinos in Georgia by the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. How did that make you, was that some validation for you? How did that make you feel when that happened? And was that something you were able to share with Jolie as well?
Yeah, it was. And she's so proud. She's so sweet. My daughter thinks I'm amazing, and I think she's incredible. It's not validation, but I felt just so honored because I want to lift my community. And it's so funny because when I've dated other minorities, it was just for them, it was like the normal thing to do. But sometimes dating outside my race, and they, and I talk to guys who are not Latino that I date, and they see this stuff at first. If they've never had a minority experience, it's different for them. But when they see how much passion I put into why I need to lift my community up, and then they lift me back, it just feels like I feel so honored and so grateful, because now that I feel so empowered, now that I've come full circle, the first thing I want to do is make sure that I give back, that I'm able to tell their stories, to tell our stories, because who better to tell our stories than us? And for them to recognize that in any opportunity that I'm able to intersect the English-speaking language, English-speaking medium of news with a Latino story, I try to do that. So for them to see that and acknowledge that, I just felt so humbled.
What advice would you give to any women who are kind of struggling with that confidence issue and not understanding their worth? Like, what would you say is the most important factor in figuring out what your worth is and how to be able to move forward in whatever they decide to do?
I think if you have a dream in you that you want to be something, it's because if God already has put that vision inside of you, that means that it's attainable. So you just have to believe in yourself. When I couldn't believe in myself, I reached out to people that believed in me. My friends would tell me, I see something better for you, even when I didn't see that. My family members would tell me, I see something more, even when I didn't believe in me. So surround yourself with people who lift you, who, when you are your most down and outs, they, lift you up on their shoulders. And I would just say that's the key. The key is to have a support of people that love and want the best for you. And also, you have to know that you are capable. If that dream's inside of you, you are capable to reach it. You just have to believe and let go of all those thoughts that stop you, that inhibit you from reaching it. Because once you just believe, you're in a state of just being. You're not forcing anything to happen. And I remember trying to force things to be great. Like, I remember not being able to speak on camera. Literally, my throat would close up because I would get so nervous. And when I just started just being and flowing, I remember things would come out of my mouth and stories, and I'm like, wow, I just said that. I did good. So believing in yourself is key.
So I asked everybody what their word is, and I asked what your favorite word is right now, and you said love. So tell me what that means to you right now.
Love means so much to me because it is something that we're born with. Like, we're born with the right to love. We're born, with love. I actually wrote some notes here because, I'm old and I forget stuff. It's so important, that word for me, because in family and relationships, when I love, I'm 100% all in. And it's our innate right as human beings to love and be loved. And we shouldn't let anything else make us feel like we're unlovable, like we're not worthy. So that's my word. That's my goal in life, to have that 100% pure love. And I think sometimes we train ourselves to think that if we go into a relationship, that things should be magical right away or work out right away. And if there's a problem, you just leave. But it's like going to the gym and expecting the first day to get a six-pack. Like, that's not going to happen. You have to put the work in. You have to put the practice in to be with that person, just being with them, hanging out with them without maybe even having conversations, being in their presence, to put in the work, to holding space, to have difficult conversations, to investigating their characters. So love is so huge for me, because your partner's in a funk. Are you going to leave? Because I know I've gotten in funk. So I think true love works through all of that. Obviously, if there's toxic, traits, if someone's not being honest with you, if someone is being deceitful, there is definitely, reasons to walk out, to not stick it through. 100% pure love to me is the ultimate reason why we do things in life, whether it's romantic or with family.
And well, speaking of kind of romantic relationships or even friendships, I'm sure there's an added layer of I don't know if you would call it skepticism or not, as you're a public figure. I mean, you have your own entertainment segment in Atlanta. Yours was the first, and now others have been popping up, which I can't believe yours was the first. That's crazy with Atlanta being Black Hollywood. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yours was the first. But how does that layer into the potential for relationships or even new friendships?
Well, now I guess, it's so funny that I have to even consider that, because I never thought myself like a celebrity, but definitely you don't want people approaching you for the wrong reasons. And not because Atlanta is the new Hollywood. You do have this part of the society, of the social circle, that wants to be put on. So you have to be very skeptical of who approaches you and what their intentions are. So one, typically because of what I've been through, it's very hard for me to trust anyway. So I already have like an armor layer. But what I've learned from the universe too is just to trust in it, because ultimately the universe
is best for you. And if you trust, then, and anything that happens, whether you think it's bad or good, you always learn a lesson from it. Obviously, don't let everyone into your energy. Protect your energy. Not everyone deserves it. I feel like the woman that I am now, this self-aware, confident woman who wants to, who works out of love and gratitude. Not every person, not every friend deserves it, or every person. This shit keeps messing up. Not every person deserves it. So I'm going to be very cautious of who I pour myself into. But I also try to not hold back on who I am. Like I don't do it like, okay, this person doesn't get it, but this person does. I just try to be authentically me, no matter who is around. But not everybody's going to get the same energy if I see that they don't want the best for me.
Gotcha. Well, now I go into the questions that I ask everybody. And the first one is, what do you wish you would have known when you started out?
What I wish I would have known, that the magic was in me all along. I didn't have to look for it in other places or in anyone else, that the magic was in me all along.
What are you curious about right now?
I am curious about just life and people and community, especially in this time of coronavirus. I'm curious to see the lessons that we're going to get out of it. I'm curious to see if we're going to stay in harmony, if we're going to be respectful and loving to the earth, if we're going to be kind and compassionate towards each other. And I'm curious, and I'm looking forward to finding real love.
So whether, I love that, whether professionally or personally, failure is something that teaches us. What is something that you've failed at?
I don't consider anything really a failure, because I think anything where we quote unquote good or bad really shapes us, and we get big lessons from challenging times. It's not the good fun times that give us character. It's the struggles that I feel give us character. So I don't consider anything a failure.
What can always make you smile no matter what mood you're in?
My kid, every time that I FaceTime her, we FaceTime like 20 times a day. And I call her and she's like, "Mommy," just that word lights me up.
Okay. I love that. I mean, because I know that's true. I know how much you adore
just that
your
word,
daughter.
hearing "Mommy," and the tone in which she says it just stirs something in my stomach, and I feel everything from like the neck down. It's amazing.
Okay, I forget the place, and I don't know if this is the same place that you would answer this. What is your go-to order at your favorite Atlanta restaurant? So I know where we went. I forget the name of it. I don't know if that's where you would say. And if I went to go visit you in Jersey, what are both places like? What am I going to order? Where are we going to go, and what am I going to order?
Okay, so my favorite food, comfort food, and this is crazy, is Indian food. So if I am feeling like I want to pick me up in Atlanta, I'm going to order some chicken tikka masala, some chana masala, and some garlic naan. Love it. So yummy. It makes me feel good. I feel like in a past life, I was, some kind of person that lived in India. In Jersey, my go-to food, my comfort food, because I feel like I haven't found any other city or state that has it the best, is empanadas, Colombian empanadas. They're so good there, and I hardly eat red meat, but when I go there, I can eat like 10 of them in a row. And if I was with you, girl, I'll get some papas with tacos.
I was like, I know you need to come visit me in San Diego. There's a lot of taco. We can go to Tijuana. I'm only like I'm 20 minutes from the border.
Yeah, I've been to San Diego before you lived there when you were in Texas still. And girl, you can get a platter of all these tacos with rice and beans for like $2.99. I mean, you said the price went up, but whatever. I remember the $5.99. That filled my soul. Yeah. It was a whole vibe.
The final question: wine, red, white, or rosé, and what kind?
I love red wine, and I like Pinot Noir. It's my favorite.
Astrid, I love you so much. I'm so happy that we finally did this. I know it took forever, but I love you so much. And I'm so happy that I was able to do this and that you were able to share. I got to know even more of you than a lot of this I think I knew, but I got to know even so much more about you than I already know. And I love that. And I appreciate you being so open.
Thank you, girl. Thank you for thinking of me as a guest. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for staying in touch all these years. Thank you for helping me through my Bell's palsy and running with me when I had to close one eye with my hand so the wind wouldn't hit the eyeball.
Anything. That's what friends are for. And until next time, mi gente, saludos.
Salud. Bye, girl.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast. We wanted to make sure we provided some resources for you to be able to donate or learn more information on Black Lives Matter. So make sure to check out the show notes. Also, please make sure to visit your local Black-owned businesses and support. Often a quick Google search will give you plenty of places to choose from. Do you have a story that needs to be told or know someone who does? Then please reach out to me via my social media channels. You can reach me on Instagram at The Wine and Chisme, on Facebook and LinkedIn at The Wine and Chisme Podcast. I want to hear your story. Remember, if you want to hear more of The Wine and Chisme, please subscribe, rate, and review. 5-star ratings are appreciated, and those positive reviews are appreciated even more. Until next time, saludos.